Alright, so wrapping up the show today, out of Reuters, the U.S. Supreme Court's conservative majority on Friday ruled 6-3, unsurprisingly, that the constitutional right to free speech allows certain businesses to refuse to provide services for same-sex weddings. Denver area web designer Lori Smith, who cited her Christian beliefs against gay marriage in challenging a Colorado anti-discrimination law. The justices overturned a lower court's ruling that had rejected Smith's bid for an exemption from a Colorado law that prohibits discrimination based on sexual orientation and other factors. Now, 303 Creative sells custom web designs, but Smith opposed providing her services for same-sex weddings. Conservative Justice Neil Gorsuch wrote in the ruling that Colorado's law would force Smith to create speech that she does not believe, which would be in violation of the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment, saying, quote, "Were the rule otherwise, the better the artist, the finer the writer, the more unique his talent, the more easily his voice could be conscripted to disseminate the government's preferred messages. That would not respect the First Amendment. More nearly, it would spell its demise," end quote. The court's 3 liberal justices dissented. Justice Sotomayor wrote, quote, "Today the court, for the first time in its history, grants a business open to the public a constitutional right to refuse to serve members of a protected class," end quote. So, what the hell? All I can think of when I sit back on this is, yeah, no, the screaming libs from 2018 and 2019 were right. The GOP will take every opportunity they can to reverse the progress of the gay marriage ruling in 2015. I mean, departing from the current case for a second, they flat out admitted it. In Clarence Thomas's ruling opinion after overturning Roe v. Wade, like I mentioned in the last segment, he cited that previous cases ruled off the basis of the 14th Amendment would need to be, quote, reevaluated. These included, verbatim, Lawrence v. Texas and Obergefell v. Hodges. For context, these previous cases prevent state and federal governments from creating limitations surrounding sodomy and gay marriage. But back to the case, however, let's dive into the plaintiff for a minute. So, Lori Smith. God, why is this the most suburban name imaginable? Jesus. Anyways, so Lori Smith is an evangelical Christian who said she believes marriage is only between a man and a woman. She preemptively sued Colorado's Civil Rights Commission and other state officials in 2016 because she said she feared being punished for refusing to serve gay weddings under Colorado's public accommodations law. So she sued to refuse service to a particular group of people. Totally not comparable to anything else in history. Not at all, nah. So she preemptively sued based off of a hypothetical. And yes, this is basically a hypothetical. And we're going to touch on that in a second, but there's a twist in the story later. You won't even guess what it is. So, if she's suing against public accommodations law, let's figure out what it is in the first place. So, public accommodation laws exist in many states, banning discrimination in areas such as housing, hotels, retail, restaurants, and educational institutions. Colorado's current anti-discrimination law bars public businesses from denying goods or services to people based on race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, and other characteristics. Basically, it's the line that we all learned in elementary school. You don't discriminate your services because of someone's immutable characteristics. For example, these laws prevent businesses from refusing services to black people, women, or people who believe in a different religion. So, how does this case even touch anything revolving around freedom of religion in the First Amendment? By interpreting the service of designing a website as art. As stated earlier, the conservative Supreme Court justices have essentially deemed any of Mrs. Smith's business as an intrinsic act of free speech. However, the reach of this case can span far further than just that. If it inflicts on free speech, would it still be allowed under the law to refuse designing a website for an interracial couple? What about someone who's making, a really damn good creme brulee, right? Cooking is an art. You express yourself in every little thing you do. Whatever your craft may be, you could technically consider that art, right? Let's say someone is religiously opposed to 2 people from different races getting married. Under this ruling, that person should be allowed to discriminate their services to that couple. Even further, I'd argue that based on this ruling, you could deny services to basically anybody for any immutable characteristic. Hate disabled people? Cool, you don't have to serve them. Hate women? Make up a religion that specifically hates them. Don't want to serve Christians? This law should do the trick. So, full stop, No question about it. This is just a discriminatory ruling. It's meant to empower, businesses and bigots to refuse their services to marginalized communities. And honestly, it opens a precedent that potentially regresses back and discriminates against others. What's next? People of color to satiate racists? Political affiliation? Gender? I know it may seem like I'm listing these out for dramatic effect, but I genuinely don't know. The Supreme Court, as I mentioned earlier, has just completely gone off the rails regarding precedent, evidence, and justiciable injury. We saw that with Kennedy versus Bremerton High School when the football coach quit his job because the school district informed him to stop asking students to engage in a public prayer. He then continued to do the prayer and invited news agencies and state legislatures to witness it. In every instance of this case, Kennedy was making public displays of religious worship in a federally funded public institution. Under the guise of the Establishment Clause, he had no legitimate case. But yet, in 2022, the Supreme Court ruled that the school district had violated his private worship. Yeah, real private stuff out there on the 50-yard line, inviting news reporters and state legislators and requesting your players to join you. Anyway, the current Supreme Court, conservative majority, has a precedent of taking incomplete or factually unsound cases and misinterpreting them to get the results that they want. And we have all of this going on while we have controversy surrounding Clarence Thomas potentially receiving money and trips from billionaires during his time as a justice. But, and this is the twist, guys, in light of new information, this may be the most dishonest and disgusting lawsuit I've seen in years. So out of CNN, Lori Smith had claimed in court filings that a man had inquired about her services for a same-sex wedding. Now, the man in court records was identified as Stewart, and in the court filings, he supposedly had requested graphic designs for invitations and other materials for a wedding with his fiancée, Mike. However, after, CNN picked up the contact information within the public court filings, they went out to contact Stewart, and Stewart said that he did not submit a request to the company 303 Creative and is happily married to a woman of 15 years. Jesus Christ! So in one of the chief instances that Lori Smith and 303 Creative hinged their case on, likely didn't happen? And this isn't a new case or anything. This case has been in the courts for 6 years. In the 6 years that this case has been around, no one, and I mean no one, thought to check through the contact information and confirm that these requests and instances were legit? What a dumbass situation, man. The Supreme Court got duped, pure and simple. So not only is this a completely destructive ruling, but it's based off of a potential lie and ultimately a hypothetical without any justiciable injury. It was entirely preemptive. And all for what? To discriminate against gay people because you don't want to make a website or design an invitation? Oh, would that hurt your feelings? I'm sorry, guys. I just don't understand this, man. I don't speak snowflake. God. We're in a sad state of affairs, man. The edge of apathy nears me closer and closer with every passing day. And yeah, it makes good content, but holy shit, it's hard to sleep at night sometimes, dude.